I was doing with Roots Roundup, where I mash up all these different styles of music, you know, like reggae, ska, punk rock, old style rock and roll, like, you know, Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley type stuff, and just real high energy, big mishmash of styles. You know, after Roots Roundup broke up, I spent about 14 years playing pure reggae, right? Just you know, just pure reggae, not ska, not rock and roll, just as reggae as we could get it, right? And it was fun, and we got to play lots of really great gigs. We got to play with, you know, basically anybody you want to name in the international touring reggae world. But after a while, it's sort of, like, I really love it, but I sort of, my heart is more in rock and roll, and I like to mash up the styles, and I found going around to play in the small communities, like when you go and play in community halls, say on the Gulf Islands or in the interior, where you're playing 3 sets of music, people like you to sort of play a bit more of a variety of music. Like, not everybody wants to hear reggae all night long, right? So, you know, if you're playing a reggae concert and you're opening up for a reggae band and they want to hear all reggae, that's fine, we can do that. But if you're going and you're playing 3 sets of music and entertaining people for the whole night, you have to, I think, what my experience is people like a little bit more of a variety
variation,
show, right? Yeah.
dynamics.
Yeah.
What was the name of that band?
Which, the reggae band?
Yeah.
We were called Dub Freak.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that's what I'm sort of, you know, on that level I'm trying to get back towards. As far as playing, you know, in dance music, reggae music and stuff, I'm putting that project back together.
You have a bit of a legacy with Roots Roundup. When did that band come together?
86.
And what was the premise behind that?
Basically, you know, after I finished playing in the Unknown Fibers, you know, I was playing as a solo musician and going to see bands like Shanghai Dog and stuff, and, you know, I was friends with Barry Taylor, and, you know, going to Stalag 13 and or the Boys Club or whatever, and I sort of felt that I wanted to, you know, rather than play music that made people want to smash into each other, play music that people wanted to dance to, right? And so as soon as I started playing it, I could see that it was working and that people were kind of like, yeah, right on. And for me, punk rock and reggae have always been intertwined in that, you know, I started listening to reggae from listening to bands like The Clash and, you know, even later on like The Specials, stuff like that took me into playing reggae music. And like, you watch a movie like Rude Boy, for example, and they're all listening to reggae music, right? You know, reggae was very influential in England, and the whole rebel music thing, the riots in Brixton, you know, in the early 80s and everything, it was all the punks and the reggae scene were sort of together, right?
What
so for me,
actually is a Rude Boy?
well, a rude boy, technically it's an early 60s Jamaican term, which actually was a term for a low-level hoodlum gangster in Kingston.
Yeah.
Like it went on, the ska scene sort of used it to describe themselves, you know, as rude boys. But originally it was like early 60s, 63, 64 in Jamaica. They were referring specifically to, you know, low-level, street-level hoodlums in Jamaica. They called them rude boys.
And then there's a musical movement, the Rude Boy movement.
Yeah, basically the ska, they all call themselves
Because
rude
some
boys.
skinheads evolved into Rude Boys.
Yeah, they usurped the name as well and decided to use it. And skinheads, like, there's a lot of reggae, there's a lot of people who look like skinheads who aren't necessarily Nazi skins, right?
Of course.
You know, there's a wide range of people too, and, you know, a lot of them are really into ska music as well.
I think anyone who's a Nazi skin is absolutely lost.
Yes.
They're just trying to be a part of something and not get beaten up or something. So they go out and beat others up. So that is a lost cause.
They were the ones who ruined that party at the Boys Club. It was the Nazi skins who came and started causing all of this trouble and, you know, just basically trying to pick fights with everybody that they possibly could.
Do you have any influences? You mentioned The Clash. Who are your musical influences?
It's pretty wide for me. Like, you know, it's
Give us
everything
a
from
top 10.
Well, I would say, you know, The Clash. I really like Devo. I really like a lot of reggae music from
Bob Marley.
Yeah, from all the various genres, like all the way from the early '60s right up until, you know, the dance hall stuff, right up until about 1992, right around the early '90s. Even the dance hall reggae started getting really repetitive, and you know, sort of very machine-like, similar to hip hop in that it became pretty formulaic, right? But even so, you know, even throughout the '90s and the 2000s, you know, there's still you know, people like Beanie Man, Elephant Man, you know, some stuff like that, you know, I enjoy. But much more sort of the roots rock reggae style, like Toots and the Maytals,
Yeah.
Bob Marley. You know, I'm really into stuff like that, songwriter-oriented reggae, right, as opposed to just, you know, more hip-hop reggae. Although even with the modern stuff, like I really like Damian Marley, right? Like Damian Marley is a great bridge between, you know, the old school reggae that his dad was playing and the dance hall and the hip hop scene. Like he really brings all those scenes together, right? So, you know, when he comes to Vancouver, he can draw like a good 3,000–4,000 people these days, right? Which not too many other reggae artists can do, you know. But apart from that, you know, on the punk rock side, you know, I was really influenced by, when I was younger, just going to see bands like DOA, No Means No, Subhumans, stuff like that.
SNFU.
SNFU a lot, oh yeah. I used to go see them all the time.
Chad's a cool guy.
Yeah, for sure. We played with them. One of my favorite gigs was playing up in Kamloops at a hockey arena with DOA, SNFU, and Roots Roundup. Played in the Riverside Hockey Arena.
That would have been fun.
Yeah, it was. It was quite something. But and then, you know, just good old rock and roll too. Like you know, I love stuff like Bo Diddley, Chuck Berry. And even going back to who I consider to be the godfather of all rock and roll is Louis Jordan. And are you familiar with Louis Jordan?
No.
He was like a boogie woogie artist, and he was hugely popular in the late '30s and the early '40s. And he was the bridge between big band music and rock and roll. And he had a band called the Timpani Five, and you know, they were playing basically straight ahead boogie woogie, but it was starting to border on rock and roll. And he was so influential on rock and roll. A lot of people don't really realize this, but Chuck Berry actually stole the opening lick for Johnny Be Good from Louis Jordan. He's like the godfather of rock and roll. He's also the godfather of rap, because he was doing spoken word type stuff, like, you know, rhythmic, rhyming stuff that wasn't singing over top of boogie woogie music back in the '30s, right? Like he was also, to a certain extent, the godfather of reggae, because reggae grew out of ska, which grew out of boogie woogie. Like if you listen to early ska music, it's pure boogie woogie. It's got that walking do 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 type bass line, right? And it's just got a skank over it, which they were doing back in the '30s and the '40s as well, right? So I find I'm really influenced by that. He was a really great songwriter, had a great sense of humor in his music. Like for me, you know, I love injecting a bit of sense of humor into the music, similar to the way Chuck Berry did too, right? You know, in his songwriting, right? There's just sort of, it's not all serious and stuff. He's telling stories, you know, kind of make it humorous and fun for people, right? Entertainment, right?
Were you ever influenced by the bombastic hard rock or heavy metal, like Zeppelin or Purple?
Not so much. I have a lot of respect for what they did, and you know, I went to go see Deep Purple when I was a teenager, but when I was a teenager, it was the guys who wanted to beat me up, me and my friends up, were the guys who were wearing the Led Zeppelin t-shirts and the AC/DC t-shirts. You know, I was walking around with a trench coat and a dog collar, and these guys were wearing Daytons with triple soles, and you know, they were the guys who would chase me through the park, or who would, you know, try and beat me up or whatever.
That's why we never travel alone.
Yeah. So as a result, I never really got into those bands until I was much older. You know, I was a young punker, and those guys sort of scared me, and I was just like, I wanted to just stay away from anybody who wore a Led Zeppelin t-shirt or an AC/DC t-shirt. But as I've gotten older, that having been said, at the time I was really into the Rolling Stones and the Who, right?
Yeah.
Like I really liked the Stones and the Who, the Kinks, stuff like that. But the heavy metal, I sort of got more into it. I appreciated I grew to appreciate Led Zeppelin and AC/DC and stuff more as I got older, and I look back on it, I'm like, wow, those guys really knew what they were doing, and they're really good at it. And you know, I started to enjoy them more as I've gotten older. But as far as rock goes, definitely the Stones and the Who and stuff like that was a big influence on me as well. You know.
Cool. No, I'm just hearing the punk, the reggae, now a bit of blues.
Yeah, well, that's why I like
Rock
to
and
do
roll.
bands like, you know, I did with Roots Roundup, and the band I'm doing now, which is I'm using my nickname Two Shirts. I've been going under the name the Two Shirts Trio, but there's 4 of us in the band, right? The past 2 times we've just been a trio, but there's actually 4 of us in the band. So I'm using my name Two Shirts Hathaway, or GT Hathaway, and the Two Shirts Trio, or GT3 for short. And that's what I'm doing, is I'm just mashing up all those styles, because I've found in the past that people like to hear it. And we play with a lot of aggression, and we put on a good show, like we give people entertainment, right? We have fun, we give them 100%.
When I saw the Hathaways, you reminded me of the British invasion, and everybody had a suit and tie, and
Yeah.
you know, the Who, the Beatles,
Yeah.
Stones, that kind of
For
thing.
sure.
And then you're doing your own stuff.
Yeah.
Was there a definitive concert you went to that made you say, here's what I want to do?
You know, probably the ones that had that